All right, what is going on, folks? It's me, Mrbucketlist here. This is a first for the channel, but I definitely want to give a first of thanks to my guest. He actually was the first person to ever invite me onto his show, and so I wanted to do the same as far as getting him back on my show, especially for my first interview. So without further ado, I do want to introduce you all. He goes by Chillies, but I'll let him introduce himself. If you don't mind, if you can just introduce who you are, what do you do, your experience with cruising, and also just your experience with social media.
All right, name's Chillies Falls. I've been cruising since 1978. I've been on 59 cruises now. I've been on 9 cruises this year. I started a channel, oh gosh, 8-9 years ago. On YouTube, it's Chillies Cruises. I now do a live daily show at 11 o'clock every day. Travel and cruise industry news. I'm also a co-host the Cruise Amigos on Sundays, which comes from London. And then you find me popping up all over the place with various videos and live streams from either cruise ships or, like this particular trip, I'm on a train. I took a train from Virginia to Seattle. So I did live streams all across the country, and I'll do the same thing going home. Due to health issues, I actually started about 7 years ago and had my first hip replaced. And then severe health issues the past couple years. Once I got back to cruising after a 2-year basic layoff, I've really specialized in accessibility on cruise ships, ports of call, cruises themselves, and I basically work a cruise ship to find where they have weaknesses and things that need to be improved. And I've been working with the cruise lines on making things better for anybody that's mobility challenged or disabled, from like me that's mobility challenged on up to severely disabled folks.
Thank you, Chillies. So I really appreciate that. And just kind of talking to you before you did this interview, you were just telling me things I never thought about. A lot of my subscribers know that of course, I do full ship tours and things like that. And I just doing that, I never once crossed my mind, hey, can a person in a wheelchair or ECV or just with a disability in general, can they make it to this area? Yes or no? Like, that never crossed my mind until we had that conversation. So not only was that meaningful for me, but also it was my first time meeting you, even though we've been talking online so much. It felt like I knew you even though I didn't. And so it was just, again, I really appreciate you being here. And so I'm gonna get straight to it. A lot of people always ask me, and it's almost a debate, but it shouldn't be a debate, but they always ask me what's the best cruise ship for their situation, whether they're a solo traveler or a female married with kids. They always want to know what's the best. So when it comes to you and your situation, what ship has been most accommodating? What cruise line and cruise ship has been the most accommodating for people in your position or people that's on my channel that may think about cruising?
It's kind of a tough question. I've done very well with Royal Caribbean. And mainly not because they do everything right, but I have access to the special needs director for the cruise line. And when I find an issue that's wrong or rough for me to handle, I take it right to him and he does something about it. So I probably would rate Royal Caribbean as the best just because I have the best access. The second best for me was probably MSC because they had a major issue with the way they were handling embarkation for disabled folks. They actually forced me to walk, and folks, I can make it about 10 yards total, and then I've got to have my oxygen going. But they forced me to walk to get to my cabin so I could get my scooter and access the rest of the ship. A couple days later, I took that to the director of their special needs on board the ship, who was also the guest services director. And when I told him what his staff had done to me, he went ballistic. Now, I had another cruise scheduled with MSC on a different ship the following week. And this guy not only took all the information down on what had happened to me, but he wired or texted or emailed or however he did it information to the next ship I was on, and they changed their policies so that it didn't happen the follow-up cruise. The next cruise with them was absolutely perfect. So there's a lot of things that, need to be changed, but I'm finding the cruise lines are more willing now to make the effort and make the changes than they have before. But right now, I would rate those two as the best, just because I'm working more with them currently, and we're heading in the right direction.
That is great to hear, and ironically, that is the most recent cruise lines I've been on, MSC and Royal Caribbean. So that's good to know. That's really good to know. That's one reason why I chose them. When they identify a problem, they do their hardest to rectify it. So I appreciate that. Now, again, like I was telling people, we just now met on the cruise ship, but the way that we actually met via online was through a Cruise for Solos group. And so, again, I'm not a solos channel, but a lot of people know I do a lot of solo traveling. And so my question to you is, in your position, of course, what experience do you have solo cruising? And not only that, do you meet other solo travelers that are and who have disabilities, mobility issues, things like that? Do you meet other solo travelers that's in your group? Are they friendly? Just how does that all work? Because that's one of my main questions I get on my channel is, do I meet other solo travelers like myself? So how does that work for you?
The very first time I went on a solo cruise, I guess by then I had been on 40 cruises maybe, and I was a little worried about it, quite frankly. The first solo cruise I did was from Port Canaveral. I flew into Orlando and took the shuttle over, and the shuttle was a bus, and I sat on the front seat of the bus, thankfully, and which left the seat beside me open. And a few minutes later, after several couples had come in and filled in behind me, a gentleman came up the steps and said, "Mind if I sit with you?" And I said, "No, come ahead." He introduced himself. I introduced myself. He's from Wichita, Kansas. He'd been a solo traveler for, I think, 6 years at the time. He and I have become fast friends. We're trying to get a schedule together where we can do another cruise together, because that entire cruise, John and I would keep bumping into each other. We had dinner a couple times. We went on an excursion off the boat once. And we've just remained really good friends over the years. He follows me online. He's on my show been on my show a couple times. And that's a good example of almost every cruise. I meet somebody new or several people new, either at dinner or doing something on the ship, or of course since I do live shows from my show from the ship itself, a lot of people will come by when I'm actually broadcasting and introduce themselves after the show or whatever and tell me that they enjoyed it or want to know more about the channel, how they can follow me online. So yeah, I just meet a lot of people that way. If you're worried about traveling solo, don't. I would never go back to traveling any other way. That's how much I'm comfortable with traveling solo. If you're a female, a single female, whether you're single or married, doesn't matter. But a female traveling solo and you're worried about all sorts of things, don't. Because you're going to find on every ship you are, there will be solo male travelers that we look out for each other. So if anybody's giving you any grief or making advances, for instance, that you're uncomfortable with, you got somebody that's going to have your back covered at all times. That's just the way we do it. We take care of each other. We meet each other. Some cruise ships have solo get-togethers. Because my crazy schedule, I start researching my travel and cruise industry news show at 4 a.m. because I have a pretty good-sized European audience. As a result of being up working at 4 a.m., I tend to go to bed early at night, and the solo meetups are generally after I'm in bed. So I don't make those as often as I'd like. But by all means, if you're on a cruise that has a solo meetup, just stop in and introduce yourself. You'll be surprised how many friends you'll make in a hurry on a cruise.
And thank you for that, Chillie. That's just because what you literally just said is what I say in every one of my videos, and I get asked the same question over and over again. And it's refreshing that you literally have the same experience I do. It's so nice to hear. People comment sometimes and say, "Oh yeah, I agree. He said that's how it worked with me." But just to hear it in person, I can honestly tell you, if I didn't know you from the Facebook group, that's probably how I would have met you, through one of those ways. Like, "Oh, you're a solo traveler, me too," and that's just how it goes. So thank you for that, and just thank you so much. Now, kind of going into that, so kind of a follow-up question. So this is just for the first-time cruisers in your position. You explained the process to me a couple of days ago, and I was just kind of blown away as far as what it took just to get to your scooter. I thought it was a little bit more simpler than that. So if you don't mind, if you can explain the process, so basically how you get from your house into your actual room with your scooter, how does that process go? Like, do you drive? Do you fly? Is the scooter there for you in the port? Things like that. Just if you can go through that process.
Well, up until recently, I've always flown to cruises. But after the health issues I've had and going through chemo, I've found the last 2 times I've flown, I've been uncomfortable on airplanes. Now, yeah, I'm a big fat guy, but if you stuff this big fat guy in a 3-way seat, he's uncomfortable. You can't get up and move around at all. So I did a series of 4 cruises last month where I drove from Virginia to Port Canaveral. I did 2 cruises. I got in my car and drove across to Galveston and did 2 more cruises, and then drove back to Virginia. That went out really well because I could control the amount of time I spent driving. I do what I felt comfortable doing, but yeah, it worked really well. Then I flew to Los Angeles to sail out of Los Angeles, and the flight almost killed me. That was when I said, well, I'm probably going to cancel my Alaska cruise, as much as I don't want to, just because I don't want to do another transcontinental flight. So that's when somebody suggested, try the train. So I took the train. And yeah, the train worked really well as well. It's long, you got to have the time to do it. And I had to learn some things on the train, like you had to make sure you're on the same level in the car as the bathroom. Well, I didn't know that. One of the legs of the trip, I was actually seated upstairs. The bathroom was downstairs, and you had to go up and downstairs, and that was rough. So that's not a good thing for me to do. Once I found that out and kept my seating on the same level as the bathroom in the cars, I was pretty good with that. When I get to a port, if it does well, and usually I have a hotel the night before a cruise, most of the time. Like in Seattle, I did. I go to the hotel, I get up in the morning, I do my show, I have a good breakfast, and then I get an Uber or a cab to the port, or a shuttle if the hotel happens to provide it. But I ride over to the port. When the driver pulls into the area to where I would get out, I make sure that he tells the officers that are directing traffic that he has a handicapped patient that needs wheelchair service. They generally let you get right close to the area where you're going to go into the building for check-in. In Seattle, I got out of the cab. The driver got my luggage out. I had a bag to check and a walker. If I could get wheelchair service, then they could go on and take my bag and the walker up to my cabin. The lady came up to me and asked if she could help, and I said, yes, I need wheelchair service. And she says, okay, I've got a bench right over here. You're third in line, but if you don't mind waiting for a few minutes, I'll have a wheelchair right out for you. I said, well, that's fine, as long as I can sit. So I checked the suitcase and the walker. I had my computer bag, sat down, and had to wait a few minutes till the wheelchair came. Once the wheelchair came, man, it's lickety-split. They took me in. They get you first through security. Of course, going through security is a little different because I'm in a wheelchair now. I can't go through the beep, beep, beep thing, whatever you call that thing that makes noise. And because of the metal hips, I already know I've got to be wanded to start with. So they just take me through to the side. I have to be frisked thoroughly. And depending on where you are, I mean, it's a thorough check, and I understand that, so I don't get upset about it. But a good frisking and wanding, and then I go from there to the check-in procedures, get registered, show my test results, show my boarding pass, do all the paperwork things you have to do. They take me partway to the ship. Then the wheelchair person from the port hands you off to the wheelchair person from the cruise ship. He's the one that actually takes you on board the ship. When I got on in Seattle, it was earlier than the cabins were available for the public. And I said, okay, I have to get my scooter, which is in the cabin. Scoot around where I rent my scooter. I also run an oxygen concentrator for them. Delivers it to the cabin. So I said, I got to get to the cabin to get it. And he says, okay, we'll go to the cabin and get your scooter. You can't use the cabin for now, but we can get the cabin out of there. And I said, okay, that's cool. So he took me straight down to the cabin. We got the scooter. I could at least, access the rest of the ship. And so I was free to go. And then when they announced that you could go to the cabin, I went on down to the cabin and stowed away my computer bag and the rest of the stuff I had with me. But yeah, it can be complicated, especially in the ports that give you grief. Seattle went really smoothly. When I was in Los Angeles, that went really smooth. Port Canaveral was awful. Port Canaveral, they fight you every step of the way. And that's one of the areas that I'm working on, straightening Port Canaveral out. That's liable to end up with an ADA lawsuit, quite frankly. But they are just awful. Miami has changed their policies. They were bad, now they're really good. I haven't been to Fort Lauderdale since I've really started working hard on this area. But yeah, it can be a complicated thing. But if you're mobility challenged, whether you have a walker, a scooter, or a wheelchair or a power wheelchair, we all have to do basically the same things to get on a cruise ship.
Thank you for that. And I was actually curious, not to mention it, this is actually my first time flying into a port and using the Uber to get into the port. And so, those guys, like I said, I guess the people that do the parking, whatever, they just scream at your Uber, go this way, do this, do that. And so I can only imagine what they tell when they have somebody with a disability. They probably don't know until you have to flag them down and let them know. So that's just a great answer. I never thought about that again until now, but thank you for that. People, I just want to apologize. It seems like all the children just decided to come down to this level as soon as me and Chillies started talking. I haven't seen kids in this entire cruise until now, so if you hear the crying, that's what's going on. This isn't Virgin Voyages, y'all. This is Royal Caribbean. Kids are allowed. Going on to the next thing. So, one thing, I know you said you've been working with the cruise lines to kind of get things straightened out. So my next question is, what are major issues that you notice all cruise lines has when it comes to accessibility? What are some things that you already know when you get on the ship? It's either going to be a struggle or just difficult. Just if you can kind of expand on that.
My biggest issue with cruise ships is swimming pools and hot tubs. Now, keep in mind, I'm mobility challenged. I can walk a little bit. So if a hot tub has 3 or 4 or 5 steps up to it, as long as there's a good railing, I can get my way up to the top. As long as it's got a railing back down the steps, can get down in a hot tub. Pools are a little different. A pool, yeah, got to have, generally there's steps up and steps down. It gets a little bit more complicated for me to get into a pool. I usually don't. The cruise lines claim that they are accessible because they have a lift chair. I don't find the lift chair as any part of accessibility for this reason. I'm a big fat guy, like I said earlier. You put me in a lift chair and some guy is going to crank me up at the air, swing me out over the water in front of 300 people who are out there sunbathing, drop me down in the hot tub or the pool. I find that to be degrading, insulting, and I'm just not going to do it. So, you know, it's oh yeah, let's get the handicapped guy, let's make a big scene and get him over here in the water. That'll be nice. Yeah, no. If I can't get there myself, I'm not going to do it. Now, I have talked to other folks that are disabled, and they'll take the lift chair because it's better than nothing. But generally, as a general rule, there's no accessible swimming pools on a cruise ship and no accessible hot tubs on a cruise ship. However, this particular ship, Quantum of the Seas, has an accessible swimming pool. It's the first one I've come across. And when I say an accessible swimming pool, it has the pool deck itself is up 2 or 3 steps, but there's ramps, several ramps to that level, so you can easily get to that level. And then there is a ramp down into the water. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can actually get yourself into the swimming pool the way it's done in really good Ys, for instance, that have accessible pools. I've not seen it on any of the other ships I've been on. I know they have it on some ships, but the Quantum of the Seas is one that has an accessible pool. The other 2 pools are not accessible as far in my consideration, nor are the hot tubs. It's a matter of design work. It's something that's got to be done eventually. But to do that is going to be changing the design of cruise ships, and that doesn't happen overnight. A friend of mine just got, a lady that I've interviewed numerous times, was just promoted to president of a river cruise line in Europe. And I've been talking to her, and we'll start working with her next week, as a matter of fact, on coming up with ways that we can make river cruising in Europe accessible. Currently, river cruising in Europe is inaccessible for this reason. The bridges in Europe are lower than the bridges in the United States. So the river cruise ships cannot have an elevator. Therefore, you don't have accessibility from one floor to another. So this is a whole mental concept now to try to come up with a way of making river cruising accessible. It might be something totally unique that we haven't done, but we're going to try to put together a consortium of 4 or 5 minds that are thinking in terms of coming up with a way to make it accessible and see if we can come up with some ways of doing it. So that's something we're working on for the future. It's an area that's been weak in the past. We're getting better. We're heading in the right direction, but it's going to take time, folks.
Thank you. Now, I did want to kind of go over something. So I know when we first talked, you had told me, you said your main goal is if you can at least help one person, you would be content. And so I did some research and looked at some of my comments on my channel. And this one lady left me a comment, so I just kind of wrote it down verbatim as far as what she said. And I just want to see your response to it, because for me, I honestly didn't know what to say. And basically what her comment was she said she lost her husband a few years ago, and she is just now getting back into the way of living life and things like that. And she basically is trying to get into things that they both enjoyed. One thing that they never did was they never cruised, but she felt like that would be something for her to do, because she knows a lot of people that are widows and widows, stuff like that, go on cruises. It just seemed like it was fun. And she said what really made that apparent to her was watching my videos. And she basically was like, after watching your videos, it made me want to cruise, but as far as someone in my position, can you honestly recommend a cruise to me? And so I'm not sure of your marital status, but I do know as far as one of her main things was, she said she's elderly and she's also disabled. And so again, I really can't relate to anything in her situation. So I want to actually forward that question to you. If you don't mind, I mean, if you can expand on your health issues that you had before then that really got you to traveling like we talked about, and what you can recommend, if you can recommend to her or not.
First of all, yes, I can recommend to her to travel. No matter what the situation are with health issues, age, it doesn't matter. I'm going back 4 or 5 cruises ago. I had a hot date on a cruise. My hot date was 94 years old, and she called me Sonny. Now, that was just awesome. And we went to dinner several times. We went to his shows twice. We met at bars 3 or 4 times and had adult beverages. And she was just a delight to be around. But we had fun. You're going to find folks in your age group that enjoy life and enjoy what we have left in life. And this is the way we choose to do it. As far as I'm concerned, I had mobility issues prior to the 2 years ago. I had both hips replaced. I have one knee that needs replaced. However, I've never been able to get my weight under 275 pounds, which the surgeon requires before he'll replace a knee. Then the pandemic hit. And because of my age, I'm 73, my sister, who we live on she and I inherited the family farm. She's 10 years older than I am. Her better half is 4 years older than she is. And her daughter, my niece, is now 50. But so when the pandemic hit, we were locked down totally because of our ages and health situation. Amanda, my niece, did all the cooking, did all the running, going to going to the grocery store. The only thing we did was go to doctor's appointments. I got to a point where I thought I had a urinary tract infection. Made an appointment with my doctor. I went to my doctor and said, okay, give me a pill or whatever you do to fix that, doc. And he says, well, I'm a little worried about something. I'm going to give you a PSA. And I said, no, what's that? And so it's a test. And one thing led to another, and find out that the PSA rating should be from 1 to 10 for a male my age. Mine was 484. He picked up the phone and called the oncologist, the cancer doctor. and said, I don't care what you're doing, I'm sending you this man right now. You'll see him in 15 minutes. Take care of him. So I was 3 days going through testing and craziness. I found out that I had metastasized prostate cancer. It was in 68 locations throughout my body. I had prostate cancer in my lungs, not lung cancer, prostate cancer in my lungs, in my brain, in my chest, in my lymph nodes. I'm literally all over my body. So I went through 6 months of, I call it chemo hell, but 6 months of hard chemo, and my PSA now is 2.8. Through the middle of that, I had the respiratory collapse, which I'm on oxygen now. As long as I'm sitting, I'm okay. I don't have to have the oxygen. But if I would get up and walk about 10 feet, I got to have my oxygen going. So I have a portable oxygen unit. At night, I have a full oxygen concentrator so that I can have continuous oxygen during the night. One of the drawbacks to cruising was that the cruise lines would not accept oxygen passengers. They were more concerned with, and rightly so, with taking care and worrying about people getting COVID on a cruise ship than dealing with an old fat guy that needed oxygen. I understood that. Royal Caribbean was the first cruise line that would accept an oxygen patient or an oxygen guest, which they did in February. That was my first cruise. MSC changed right after that, and that was my second and third cruise. So it was just this past 2 weeks ago that Carnival and all of its umbrella would accept an oxygen guest. So that's why so far this year I've sailed on Royal Caribbean and MSC. Now I've got other cruises booked now in the future as we're getting into a whole different situation. But that's my situation. You know, I've got to have oxygen. So when I figure a cruise, I know that part of the cost of my cruise is a scooter, because I have to have that to get around the ship or to go off the ship if I'm in a port of call, and an oxygen concentrator so I can breathe. So that just raises my price, but to cruise, it's worth it. I love it. Continue doing it. Told my family, since I almost died twice last year, that I'm going back to cruising. And if I should die on a cruise ship, rest assured that I will die a happy man, because I'm happiest when I'm on the water.
Thank you for that, Chillie. It's just that's literally what my channel is based around. Like I told you the other day, and I tell people all the time, I'm not a cruise channel. I just live life, and that's the reason why. Life is so short and limited. I don't want to wait until I get to a point where I can't do anything anymore. And even for you in your situation, you went through all that, but you're still going. You're still having that, and that's how I want to be. Even if I have a situation like that, you're very inspiring. I'll tell you that. I know a lot of people that basically, if they went through something like that, they'll say, you know what, I'm done. I'm just gonna sit at home and just try to stay safe, whatever the case may be, because they just don't want to. But you literally, like, when I get older, if I have any type of issues, I'm gonna think about you and your situation. Say, if Chillie did it, I can do it too. So just thank you. I just appreciate it. Just everything you've done. I watch your channel. I watch your live streams. Just thank you. And so as far as that, you all, that's all my questions. But I just have one last question. Well, honestly, just a statement. Is there anything else you want to, before we close this interview, is there anything else you just want to put out there? Because there's a lot of questions I can ask you, but anything you want to put out there as far as people in general on my channel, your channel, just anything that I left out that you just want people to know, that say, hey, this is from Chillie, this is from my experience, this is how just anything you have in mind.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. And yes, to your guys, your channel, I will tell you the same thing that I tell my channel every day. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Think about cruising. And one day soon we'll all meet on the high seas. That's the way to live, the way to look ahead, and the way to go after it. And I truly believe that. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you all. This is Mr. Bucket List here. I'm definitely going to put all of Chillies' information on file. Like I said, he has a great YouTube channel. He does live streams. If you're really into cruise news, you all, because I don't do much cruise stuff when it comes outside of my own cruises, he's got you covered. He's always, like I said, doing updates. A lot of stuff I've watched, especially during the times when the pandemic first started. I got a lot of my information from Chillie. It was accurate. A lot of other people, you know how they do. They just put clickbait. He's not a clickbaiter, you all. And you all know I don't like that. So, I mean, if you really want to get news, thorough news, he does his research. He's up early in the morning doing his research. Check him out. He's also he's one of the administrators, a part of the Cruise for Solos groups. A very large group, very helpful. I'm in there as well. If you all want to check me out and creep on me, I'm there. I may have a little different name, but I'm there. You'll find me. But other than that, I'll see you all soon. It's Mr. Bucketlist signing out. Peace out.
Thanks for watching the video. If you like what you saw, please check out my channel for more videos just like this. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Until then, I'll see you next time. Peace.